We are on the verge of yet another global military conflict, and this has some asking the questions whether or not now is the time to invest in defense stocks, weapons manufacturers. My answer is no, and it's probably not for the reason that you think. Let's go ahead and break it down. So first, I've said this, I've been consistent about this over the last year and a half now. Number one, I don't think it's the best thing to root for weapons manufacturers companies, okay? For those to do well, it has to be a bad military conflict. So for one, I'm not someone who invests in that space, roots for that space, or encourages people to invest in that space. However, as someone with an economics degree, and I've been in finance, I do see the numbers and I understand why somebody may choose to invest in that space. I'm not in the position to judge, but I don't think this would be a great opportunity to do so, nor did I think it was the best opportunity to do so when the Russian-Ukraine conflict kicked off. One of the main reasons, from a financial perspective only, is the fact that these stocks haven't necessarily performed the absolute best during those times. So looking at the Russia and Ukraine conflict as somewhat of a template, which again is not great, you look at February 24th of 2022 and you compare that to where the stock market is now. Some companies have outperformed the S&P 500, not by a ton, and then some have underperformed. When I compare it to some of the other stocks that we've talked about on this channel, for example, we did some of the best financial stocks. Arch Capital is up more than 70% compared to the S&P 500, which blows the competition, defense stocks in this case, out of the water. When you are so fixated, or if you are fixated on global conflicts or specific events and you're trying to invest in reaction to it, that's not the best financial strategy, because again, you would have missed out on Arch Capital this entire time. We've done video after video on some of the best financial stocks, some of the best defensive stocks, some of the best dividend stocks that are doing way better than some in the defense sector. And that brings me to point number two. You don't want to be a reactionary investor. That is not a good investing strategy, in that something happens, and because that thing happens, you want to go invest in the next thing. This is different than investing in something that is inflation proof or inflation resistant or recession proof or recession resistant, because those are events and things that you can relatively predict. You can have some sort of end to it. We have data that tells us about recessions. And then when you're looking at a global conflict, whether an international global conflict in some cases, that one's a lot more predictable. It has a lot more dire consequences, much of which is very unpredictable. And what you don't want to do as an investor is to react to something and jump into something that is quite unpredictable. We are still in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. There is no end in sight. We don't know what that is doing currently. You don't want to just invest because of some craziness, some chaos, right? You don't want to put your portfolio in the hands of chaos. That's not a good investing strategy. It's not a great life strategy in general, but definitely not for an investor, because these things are quite chaotic. Even if you're looking at things that are less consequential. Let's take the US and China trade war that we've been in since, what, 2016? How has that played out in your portfolio? Very hard to gauge, right? We haven't actually come to an end to that. A lot of those tariffs are still in place, but because that is an international trade situation, that it has a lot of complexities to it and international relations, it's hard to come up with a strategy for that, right? And the market is whatever the market is. People who are trying to profit off of that situation haven't really found an answer to that, because there aren't any stocks that have profited significantly from that US-China trade war. It's just out there, right? And it's still something that's currently going on. So for something like this, no, I don't think there is a specific stock market play or a specific stock that you should invest in. I would argue that you should be investing in some of the best areas to invest in. So I say that to say there are sectors of the stock market, technology being one of them, parts of finance being one of them, that are some of the best places to invest. Continue investing there. You don't want to, again, base your portfolio and base your strategy on chaos. That has almost never been a great way to profit in any fashion, because these things can start and end or continue for an indefinite amount of time. And again, at least for me, doesn't make me feel great to root for those things just to make money, especially when there are tens of thousands of other stocks and other ways that you can make money without depending on something like this, which is unpredictable, inconsistent, which you don't want to be consistent anyway, for you to try and build your wealth off of. You don't have to do that. There are so many other ways and so many other stocks that are doing 2 and 3 times better than some of these stocks in the defense sector. So my take on it, no, this is not the best time to invest in it just because of this conflict. I really don't think there's any time personally, but again, I don't think these stocks aren't doing all that much better than some of the stocks that we've covered on the channel. You can make a whole bunch more money with a lot less risk and a lot less guilt by looking at some of the stocks that we've already talked about on the channel. So if you want to know some of the best areas to invest in, some of the best stocks to invest in right now, including Arch Capital, then this is the video that you need to watch right now.